This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 17th, 2023 meeting of the Town of North Haven Board of Finance. Before we start, I'd like to introduce my newest member, who is at the far end to my left, Mr. Bob Zambrano. Mr. Zambrano has had a long career in banking like myself. He's worked at Webster Bank, where he was in compliance. He's also worked at Citizens, First Union, and CSB. He's been very active in the community. He's currently a member of the Economic Development Commission. He is the treasurer of his condominium association, and he comes to us via referral from our second selectman, Bill Piper, who he knows through their work as a tax preparers for the American Association of Retired Persons. So I'd like to please welcome Bob to the Board of Finance.
Thank you.
Feel free to say anything, Bob, if you like.
No, thank you for appointing me, and look forward to it.
Thank you. All right, why don't we go to the minutes, please? Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said, Mr. Frieda will be joining us. He is at the senior night for the girls' lacrosse team. His expectation is he should be here in roughly half an hour, a little bit after 7. Apologies. So, minutes. Any comments on the minutes? All right, hearing none, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes of, yes, one abstention. All right. Since we have Stacy here, if we don't mind, I'd like to just juggle the agenda a little bit and let her come up and talk about the tax collector suspense list, which we all have in our packages. So, Stacy, would you like to say a few words about that?
Good evening. My name is Stacy Yarber. I'm the tax collector for North Haven, and it's my duty every year at this time to present the tax collector's suspense report. And this is pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 12-165. So these items are items that have been identified as being, for whatever various reasons, not collected for whatever reason I've listed on the report. And as such, I placed this in a report that is in draft form presented to the Board of Finance for your review. And it is a list of items that this year results in 799 accounts. A fairly low amount this year. I've been able to clean up the system quite well in the last few years. So it's $152,425.43. And if you breeze through the list, you will see that most of these are motor vehicle taxes that have been uncollected for an extended amount of time, and more likely than not will not be collected. And also a few personal property items that the assessor's office reported to me as being out of business. And lastly, there are a few in here are related to the taxpayer having passed away during the tax year. If you find that any of these are unacceptable to you, just let me know. I'll mark them off. Once you have given your approval and it's been signed off, then I process it as a full document, and that is filed in the town clerk's office for public record. Keep in mind that none of these items this year, a lot of times I place items that are beyond the statute of limitations. None of these items are being written off. What they're doing is they're placing them on the suspense list, and the suspense list is a mechanism, an accounting mechanism under state statute that allows for these to be taken off as assets of the town, because they're probably never going to be collected, but they are a collectible up until 15 years. So I could collect them, and sometimes I do. Sometimes in the interim even, from when you get the list and when it's approved, some are paid within that month and a half time period. So again, not uncollectible, just having not been collected for various reasons. Again, all that's needed is your review and your approval, and then that would be placed as an official record of the town. Any questions?
Thank you, Stacy. Any of the board members have questions?
What was the largest sum of individual item?
The largest sum would be the motor vehicles that are collectible for an extended amount of time. And again, I have a few personal property taxes that have been reported to me that by the assessor that they are out of business.
Yeah.
And then a few deaths.
Mike, I skimmed all the pages. There's no one big account that jumps out, although a number of these are to the same individual at smaller amounts, which I didn't really add up. But unlike last year where I recall there being some bigger numbers on the report,
Yes.
these are all pretty small. Almost every one is under 1,000. I may have seen a couple.
I think there's just one that's
Yeah.
2,700.
Right,
But
yeah.
most of them are 1,000 or less.
Right.
Yeah, they're, like I said, these are going back. What I do is I go grand list, and I just see what's been out there for a while. And as you're aware, you can register motor vehicles for a certain amount of time in the state of Connecticut. And if you have a flagged motor vehicle bill, or your name is flagged with the DMV, which is flagged because I placed the flag there, before you can register again, you have to catch up on your taxes. And these are old enough to assume that more likely than not, they've moved out of the state, we will never collect them, whatever, various reasons.
Yeah, liens were not applied in any of these cases, right?
Liens, no, we don't
I
file
don't think
liens
it-
for motor
Right,
vehicles.
you don't
Yeah.
file it, right.
Yes,
I understand.
yes.
So the general question would be, can any of these be somehow assigned or sold off to a third party for the pennies on the dollar?
No.
No, okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Any questions?
Any other members have questions? No. We'll need a motion, please.
To accept these?
Yes.
I would like to make the motion to accept the suspense report and accept the non-collection of these items.
No, that's
No.
actually no. What you're
Well-
doing is you're going to be approving it to go to the suspense list. It's not going to be uncollectible. It's having not been collected, it's eligible for suspense. They can be collected still for up to 15 years
All
from
right, so
their
I
due
think,
date.
All right, what's the
I
proper
think-
motion?
I think the right motion is to approve the accounts listed by the tax collector's office of the items listed here for suspense status. 799 items, $152,425.43.
Okay, I make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay. Let's go back to the top. I just want to make a couple comments before we get into the questions from the members. So I've looked at the reports myself, and I'm sure the members have. I've also talked to Mike and Rich. So here's, I think, sort of the view of the town as it sits here 6 weeks from the end of our fiscal year. So when you look at the revenue, if you go to the second page, we've got $8 million of revenue remaining to be collected for the balance of the year. Some of them are big numbers, which just haven't been moved over yet. For instance, the cash surplus of $1,975,000 that we budgeted, the grants for municipal projects of $2,249,000, which hasn't been moved over yet. ARPA, $1,670,000. We've also looked at some of the line items and sort of projected out what we're going to collect for the rest of the year. I think Stacy left, but I believe she gave an estimate to the finance department that we're going to collect another $950,000. That includes the arrears, by the way. I know from talking with Ingrid and Mike, we had a strong month month-to-date through the 17th in fire fees and building fees. I think we collected almost 200,000, is that right, Ingrid?
300.
300,000, thank you. So, and Mike, I think, and Ingrid and Rich have looked at some other items and sort of projected them out. For instance, interest that we receive on our short-term investments, which has been running strong all year in the face of the higher interest rate environment we're in. So I think on the revenue side, our estimate is that we will be a little short, somewhere between $0 and $500,000. The good news is that on the other side of the ledger, on the expense side, we do seem to be running ahead. And I know Ingrid, who may want to comment in a minute, and Rich are looking at the expenses and paying close attention to them. If Mike were here, I think what he would say is that his expectation is that we would have probably a modest surplus in the current fiscal year. Ingrid, is there some other things you want to mention that I didn't bring up?
We're gonna have some savings. I have adjusted, like, for example, in page 14,
On the expense report?
on the expense report, there's an encumbrance for the track field and maintenance. I know Michael had that question before. This was an PO, an encumbrance that was for the full calendar year, not for the full fiscal year. So for the month of May, the 67,000 has been adjusted to 10. So we're gonna have some savings there.
So the rest of that encumbrance will occur in the following fiscal year?
Yes, because it's not for this fiscal year. That
Did we budget for it next year?
yes,
Okay.
it's part of the contract.
But isn't our contract based upon our budget year?
I'll have to look into that, but that's
Right? It's 80,000 for the year, and obviously, they couldn't collect because the track was under construction.
Right.
So there's no maintenance until probably, March of this year? And that's
Yes,
why
March
year-to-date,
till
there's
June.
10,000.
right. Right. So if you see that, we already expended $10,000.
Right. So
And
that
the
would be
$5,000.
March
but-
and April.
Right.
5,000 a month.
Yes,
Got
but
it.
every month is different depending. The most expensive months are August, September, and October, according to that contract.
Okay, so that unrealized expense won't be pushed off to next year. We'll just pay next year's expense that's budgeted for next year,
Yes,
which
right,
might be within next year's budget.
right.
Well said.
Okay, that is a saving.
Yes, so that is in fact a savings.
Anything else I might have missed that you want to add, Ingrid, before we open it up?
No,
No?
nothing.
Okay. Why don't we open up to the members, see if they have any questions on the revenue?
I want to thank Mr. Doheny on the overview of the fiscal year. That was one of my questions. I'll check that one off.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
There's only 20 more, don't worry.
All right, let's go with the revenues. Anyone have questions on the revenue side?
So more of a couple of points just to add to the summary is just to point out that the education grant actually came in higher than we had budgeted for,
Yes,
which is
correct.
always welcome news, an extra
Right.
$267,000, which is great news. The Mashantucket Pequot is currently a little bit short. I don't know if we're expecting to be able to collect that additional $29,000, but we're currently a little bit short of what we had projected for this year. And I guess we can ask Mr. Frida when he arrives about the Quinnipiac University voluntary donation of $300,000, exactly when we might be expecting to get that.
Let me interrupt one second. I mean,
Sure.
he's always said we're getting it. Do you know anything differently, Ingrid?
I think he said by the end of the year, we usually get
Yeah,
it.
that's
in
what I heard.
June.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. And again, just in terms of that last sort of catch-all category of town revenue departments, for some reason, the town clerk fees are a little bit on the low side compared to what we had budgeted. We had budgeted $700,000, and so far it's about 470 something.
Stace, any insight in that?
Any insights on that?
We had a great market the last few years, and we were overwhelmed with recordings. Usually it was refis or new purchases, et cetera, and that has dried up. The rates have gone up, and that is drying up, and that's really affecting our fees with regard to land record recordings. As for this next month in June, we will realize an increase in fees relating to dog tags, because we do dog tags in June. So that's yet to be decided. But we have definitely seen a decrease in land record recordings because of, in my opinion, nothing other than the change in rates. People were really taking advantage of those rates.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you. And as was pointed out, building fees are at a nice rate. Fire fees also at a good percentage. Paramedic fees, once again, is only about 20%. And I did have a question, and perhaps Ingrid can address, about the community services fees. I would think by this point, we would have kind of the spring revenue of various activities, and it seems to be a little bit on the low side. At only 141 out of 250, so at 56%. So any?
Yes, that usually picks up at the end of the year, but I'll have to look into
Okay.
that for you, yes.
That's it. Anyone else have any comments about revenue?
Tim, I'm sorry, what did you say about the ESSER grants? They're fully expected to come in as budgeted?
No. Yes, sir?
Yeah.
No, we're not getting that.
Yeah, that was actually
No,
an
no, we've talked
error.
about that numerous times, Mike. That's not coming.
Yeah, that was an error. to
Right, that was an error.
Including that. in
That
the
money-
budget.
that money went to the Board of Ed.
I
Right.
thought it was a mistake that we did include it, but that somehow we were just going to, all right, I thought we were going to,
No, Mike, if Mike were here, I think what he would say is that when we budgeted last year, it was our understanding that this money was coming to the town.
Yeah.
But it went to the Board of Ed.
okay. So your prognosis, your estimation on the $500,000 shortfall in revenue includes all numbers on this budget, including that loss, that non-realized income there.
Correct.
Right.
And for that estimate, how much of the grants for municipal projects do you believe might be applied to the current budget? And will the remainder, as has been done in the past, not be considered as revenue and just go into the savings account for that topic, for that category?
I would say that's a question better answered by Ingrid or Mike, but my understanding was all of it, but is that correct, Ingrid?
Are you saying for MRSA?
No.
Yes, it is, it's the
Mercy.
former, it's the
It's Mer-
former.
yes, he's right, yeah, it's
what-
Mercy.
It's
Yeah.
today what Mercy used to be,
Right.
yes. The grants for
So it's on the
municipal
bottom of the
projects.
first page, it's the last time on the first page of revenue.
2.2 million.
Right.
Well, we have used $890,000 year-to-date.
So that's.
Yeah, but Mike, what
Okay,
Mike is asking
right.
is.
No, okay, that is the answer to the question.
Okay.
That's how
Yeah,
it's been handled in the past.
right.
Much to my objection.
That was the schedule that you got that's in your left hand right there.
Right,
Yep.
much to my,
Right.
yes. That,
Right.
this plus May and June.
Right.
Which looks to me it's gonna be around 1.1 or 1.2 million. So that's how much of that line, that grants from municipal projects line, we usually include as revenue, and then we have declared, somehow it's been, the rest has been categorized as income that goes directly into
The fund balance.
the MRSA savings account.
Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, I am misstating it. What actually happens, the way to justify all this, is that that grant money, that grant for municipal project money goes into our MRSA, our savings account for that, for the grants. And then it's, what comes out of that savings account is what we end up utilizing to pay the operating expenses. So that's what actually happens. So this is getting paid off of previous grant money, and the new grant money in its entirety goes into the savings account. That's actually how it transpires. Have I confused everyone here on the board?
No, but people at home are probably confused.
Okay, well,
By the way, you reminded me of something Mike told me earlier today, that the state is no longer allowing waivers for capital equipment purchase through MRSA.
really?
Yes. Apparently, one or two towns tried to sneak through something that they weren't, and so
Well, why didn't they just deny those waivers?
I don't know the full details. I'm just relating to you what I was told, Mike.
Oh, okay. We're going to have to talk with our state representatives on this.
All right, any other questions from the members on the revenue side? All right, let's go to expenses. So I might go to the last page for just a second. So near the very last page, I mean, through 10 months, the math would tell you, if everything was perfect, that we would have expended 83.3% of our budget. We're at 85.1. But we all know that there's a bunch of expenses that are lumpy,
Right.
and including on this particular page, the principal on bonds and notes and the interest on bonds and notes, which is fully expended for the year and amounts to $8 million. Sorry, 9. So 2 months' worth of that alone is $1.5 million, which, by my math, would put us closer to 81%. We'd actually be slightly below just on those two items year-to-date, if you will. In any event, any questions for Ingrid?
Just in general, I think I asked this last time about the medical expenses. Yeah. We're not going to see any surplus or deficit here because we just deduct 1/12 of what we estimated the expense to be for the year.
Can you reference a page, Mike, which I think is 17?
17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the answer is correct, right, Ingrid? We are merely flatlining the
The
expense here. We're self-insured, so all
Yes.
we're doing here is flatlining what we budgeted during the year.
So the question is, how are the claims in relation to our budgeted expense on that item?
I'll have to look into that.
Well, I think Mike has brought this up before, and I'm just as
Yeah.
interested as Mike is, frankly. You know, we need to get a report from our insurance, and Mike,
Oh, from me.
yeah, I mean, we should know what our claims have been running
Yeah,
to see if.
have a run.
Because this isn't, you know, they could run less or more, right? So that's important to know as much as this expense item is. So this is our last meeting until August, but if it's possible to get that, maybe that's something we could send out, you know,
Yeah, I
afterwards.
can do that.
Okay. Sorry, Mike, go ahead, keep going.
No, we obviously will get the May expense report and the June expense report and the July expense report in August. And so, this being the last meeting, again, I thank the chairman for the summary. That shows that we don't have to take any extreme measures or severe mitigation to remain within the budget. So, that's a good, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for that.
Thank you, Mike.
That reassurance.
Most of this we talked about last month. The only thing that I saw that was on here was on page 9, which was police, and it says traffic and maintenance and equipment, so I'm assuming that's we have more blinking lights, and it's probably for the lights that need, the bulbs that need to be changed in traffic lights, I'm assuming. But most of this, when I went through it, is stuff that myself and other members have brought up. So there's really not much here. That's the only one that really, but again, I think that's related to,
To the lights and how expensive they are.
yeah, how expensive they are, right.
I had one question, excuse me, on page 8 for the police department. The very first line item, which is personnel, part-time, I assume this refers to the dispatchers. It has year-to-date expended of only $4,400 and then nothing month-to-date.
It's backwards. That's,
So-
right?
What is it?
No, I'm
page?
sorry, well, I'm assuming it's backwards, right? Page 8.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what this refers to, but it's
Yeah.
personnel part-time for
Right.
the police department. And it was budgeted at $80,000,
Uh-huh.
and we've only spent $4,000, so I wasn't quite sure what that referred to.
I'll have to ask HR, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, sounds like Nancy's on pause. Any of the other members have questions while Nancy's looking a little bit more?
Under, let's see, I guess it's on page 12, transfer station and recycling. For some reason, we have several line items that say percent used is 0. I think the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 line items. Have we not been renting or leaf composting, permit application, any of those things?
They have not been used this year, no. I can look more into it and ask
Okay.
Mike on that.
No, they haven't. Those haven't been used. And
They haven't.
They may end up being used, but they haven't been used yet, so.
Okay. And the tipping fees, Mr. Frieda, are at 74%, so that's great news. Is there some story behind that things are
Well, you know,
in a
as
better place?
I said at the last meeting, Memorial Day will be the key, to see what happens with the summer cookouts and see what type of trash and the added tonnage with that. Right now, we're projecting under. I am anticipating and projecting on that line item that it'll come in under budget, which is good, but Memorial Day, once again, will be the key, so.
Sure, okay. And on page 13, again, under, what's that, streets and roads, I think we've talked about this before, but now I think it's safe to say that we're not going to be needing anything to be salting the roads. So under winter maintenance supplies, we had month-to-date expenses of $15,000 in the month of April. And then we have an encumbrance of almost $10,000. Is there anything that we can do?
No, that actually, the encumbrance and everything was clear for May.
Yeah,
We
so-
were not gonna have any more expenses, but that was from previous.
Yeah, you'll see that in the
Bills.
May report, we've been clearing encumbrances that were purchase orders put in, that we're clearing. So you'll see that next month, Ingrid's point.
Okay.
All right, any further questions on the expense side? If not, we'll go to our special funds report. I might point out, there was distributed at the meeting year-to-date personal money, which is $890,221. So this money has not been applied to the expense side yet, is that right, Ingrid?
No, it has not.
It has not,
We
right.
decided that that was gonna happen at the end of the year.
That's a year-end closing item, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So we can get to this when we get to Board of Ed, but I think I've pointed this out before, that there seems to be an inconsistency between the reporting on this one page of special funds under BOE capital improvement, here reflecting a balance of $151,000, and it doesn't match the special fund that we see, the long pages that we get from the Board of Ed, which I believe at the end of April is reflecting an ending balance of $67,000. So there seems to be a little bit of a difference there. And I'm not quite sure why.
Well, that does, it does say it excludes encumbrances. I'm not sure what those might be, but it does say
Or,
that.
yes, it does exclude encumbrances.
It definitely excludes encumbrances, but I think if you actually go to that sheet, the long sheets that we have to fold out, it actually spells it out for you, and we can discuss that in a minute. But I think that these two should jive. And yes, there are two encumbrances, one for Clintonville Intercom of $51,000 and Vanacore scoreboard of another $6,000 that have to be factored in.
Yeah, you're right, they're low.
Right. Just regarding the list of, with the asterisks that refers to the Board of Ed here, all of these expenditures that they have applied to the Board of Ed Capital Special Fund, I just had two questions. One, it said Ridge Road ramp replacement. And I thought I remember asking Superintendent Stirk about this because there was quite a bit of construction going on at Ridge Road, and I think they made every single entrance to the school ADA compliant. But I thought he had said that that was paid for using the special $2 million school security bond. So that's why I'm a little bit surprised to see this additional $9,000, unless that's something new. And then also this Ridge Road slide, I'm not really sure what that refers to either.
I can tell you what that is. We had this was brought to my attention by citizens. There was a safety issue on a slide, there was a hole in the slide. So that's what that repair is.
Oh, it needed to be repaired or replaced?
This was an older slide. It's not the new handicapped accessible slide that we put in there. So, but that's been repaired. It was a tremendous safety hazard for the elementary school children.
Okay.
To give you a visual, if you had a young child going down that slide, they would, before they got to the end, they'd fall in the hole within the slide. So that's how bad it was.
All right, any other questions on the special funds? Board of Ed.
So just starting with the memorandum at the very beginning from Howard, he's claiming that overall the budget should have less than $200,000 in unspent funds. And if you actually go to either the Munis report, which is just under that memorandum, or to their longer report, you'll see that they're reporting year-to-date out of the $60.1 million budget for the Board of Ed. Year-to-date, they've spent about $45,733,000. So that's for 10 months. And if you simply took that, divided it by 10, because it's 10 months, you'd get an average of, let's say, $4.5 million expended every single month, because there's 2 months left in the year. And so projecting forward, that's an additional $9 million. Now, they're claiming that they have available in their budget $11.2 million. Now, unless they're expecting a big uptick in unexpected encumbrances and other unexpected costs, that to me spells out somewhere, again, between 1.1 and $2.1 million surplus.
Don't forget that the summer payroll goes out in June. A lot of the teachers take a lump sum payment, right? So that's got to be a big part of that.
Is that for the end of this fiscal year or the
But again,
beginning of next?
all of that is budgeted, right? That has to be budgeted.
Yeah,
Right, so I'm using the numbers that they have budgeted here of, $45 million. They have an encumbrance of $3 million, but we don't know whether that encumbrance,
the 45 isn't the budget, that's the actual you're
That's the
quoting,
actual, right.
So
I'm
what I'm
saying-
saying is that that includes 14 million for teachers, right? It's a year-to-date actual.
yep,
But what I'm saying is in June, right, a lot of teachers elect to take a lump sum instead of the normal 2-week pay, so it's going to be a little bit higher. And I'm just suggesting one of the possible reasons that the expense would be a little bit higher in June, right?
yeah, I'm just trying to project out through
Yeah.
the end of the year, that's all.
Well, the teacher line is where it would be, because that's the one that's only 65% expended
Right.
Yeah.
in the month of April.
Exactly. In contrast with the administrators, the 18 administrators budgeted at $2.5 million, they're projecting that it's actually going to be about $130,000 over. So I guess I'm questioning the overall calculation of only $200,000 unspent funds. My calculation is higher than that. In terms of their actual budget, it seems as though there were a couple of either under-budgeted or unbudgeted items, such as the pension was under-budgeted by $100,000. If you go down to program and staff development, I find it very disconcerting to see that that's only at 44%. And then we have this total mysterious non-certified professional tech that is only being utilized at 14% of budgeted. So it remains to be seen exactly, how they're going to end up with their operating budget. But I think that this 200,000 doesn't necessarily reflect what we see here. And Mike, just to be clear, the Vanacore Field scoreboard, they're only paying for half of that, is that right? The Board of Ed?
No, I think they're paying full amount. We'll double check that, but
Okay,
that's my understanding.
okay,
We'll make a note of that.
sure. And if you turn to the page, the special fund for the Board of Education that is medical and dental, again, this is one of these long pages that folds out. And you look at the medical and dental prescription cash reserve fund, the balance, and this is the upper left-hand corner, is $3,274,678. And then just below that in black, they have the 3 different levels that the actuarian provides for minimum level reserve, mid-level reserve, which is usually what we target, and then maximum level. And it turns out the current reserve funds actually exceed the maximum reserve that is, amount that is targeted by the actuarian. So it is what it is, but I thought that was important to point out.
Actually, that's not quite 100% true, right? It's close, right? But it's short, isn't that short 2,000, is that what they're saying there? Right,
$3,274,000, even if you reduce it down? Oh, I see, because you're using the adjusted amount that...
I'm just looking at the right-hand column that says the actual max level reserves required dental and medical.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, it says 2.7, then it says 100%. Oh, I know why, because they're using the 2,000,006. So it's 100% really, right,
Yeah,
Nancy?
exactly.
Right.
And there's a reason for it,
Okay,
but
let's hear it.
due to HIPAA, I cannot explain the reasons.
Okay.
All I can say is that there's a lot of long-term illnesses, shall we say.
Okay.
Any further comments on the Board of Ed?
Yeah, if you turn to the next page, Dewey Capital. Again, this is what I was referring to before. If you look at the upper left-hand corner, the 600,000, that's where we started in July. And if you look at the lower right-hand corner, including the 2 encumbrances, for the Clintonville intercom system and the scoreboard, which is only at $6,189, which is why I asked that question of Mike. It appears as though they're expecting to end the year with projected capital projects fund balance of about $9,500. So that is the actual projected balance for the end of the year. Now, again, there's nothing listed for the months of May or June at all in terms of capital expenditures.
I will send an email to Ingrid and Howard on the discrepancy between this report and the $150,000 that's on the special funds report.
Sure.
All right, I'll take a motion on the reports, please.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay.
No. And thank you to Ingrid for the municipal grant spreadsheet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, we're going to go on to the fire inspector, fire investigator discussion. I think we all know what the topic is. We had two individuals that were previously consultants with the town. We had discussion last month, and it was discussed at the town meeting that we have moved them to employees. They are employees right now, as far as I know, and they're in the budget next year as employees at the budget amounts of $100,000 and $50,000. But I know there was some conversation and comments last month about this board endorsing them as employees for the current fiscal year. But having said that, I'm going to let Mike fill in a little bit more.
So this came up, as you will remember, and I agreed to put this on the Board of Finance agenda. There's still a gray area as to whether we need to do that, but in the spirit of cooperation and always erring on the side of caution, I agreed to have this put on the Board of Finance agenda so we can vote on it for this current fiscal year, because it's a table of organization change technically in this fiscal year's budget. So that's why it's on the agenda, for this board to vote. And I don't think I need to summarize the reason that we're doing this: to minimize the liability for the town, minimize and eliminate the liability for the two, not what are now employees or who are now employees. So we have to really be careful in terms of not maximizing the exposure to the town on liability. So that's why it's before this Board of Finance for a vote. And the vote, again, is for this current fiscal year, ending June 30th.
I did talk to Jeff as well, because I know, Nancy, you yourself has brought up the topic of the employment tables in the rear of the budget, and I have to admit, I left my notes at home. I rushed out without them, but he did tell me there are different interpretations, but certainly the more conservative route would be to have this board vote them in as employees in the current fiscal year.
So I appreciate certainly having Mr. Frieda add this to the agenda. I think this is very important, and certainly not just a rubber stamp process that we are going through. I think it is very important to acknowledge these two individuals and the risks that they take on behalf of our community every single day. And I think that it is very important that this Board of Finance acknowledge that any change to the employment table mid-fiscal year actually involves the town engaging in a contract, and that contract results in an appropriation that was not originally budgeted, that was not originally approved by the referendum. And so I think that does in fact require a Board of Finance vote of approval. And as such, I'd like to make a motion that we not just have a discussion, which is what our agenda says, but that we actually make an amendment to the agenda to also include a vote.
And that's the intention for tonight, so I think.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Thank you.
All right, so it's open for discussion. Other members' thoughts?
Yeah, well, whether or not this is been a certain practice or classification for many years. It's always good to have any risks reviewed by our professionals and by our department heads, and to bring these exposures to our attention. So I'm all for correcting things, whether it should have been done a while ago or not. Making the right move now is a good move today and for the future.
All right, anyone else have any thoughts?
I just have one question. Again, this was raised last month, and I think it was raised again at the town meeting. If these two individuals are in fact going to be town employees, I think it's very important that they are reflected in our budget book as town employees. So is there a way, and this is actually a question, I don't know the answer to it, is there a way to change the way that these two individuals are not just reflected in the way that they are presented in the next year's budget that was just approved at the referendum?
So this came up. Sally brought it up at the
Yes.
at the meeting, and I said that we'll take a look at it.
Yes.
And we did take a look at it.
Okay.
So we decided to keep it the way it's listed in the budget book for this reason. It's easier for us to track it as a separate line item because one of the two individuals is part-time. And we have to make sure that if we bundle it into one line, it'd be difficult to track to see what the expenditures are, considering one of the two individuals is part-time. So, on an hourly rate. So, the reason you see it in the budget book, we looked into it, to bundle it in, we lose sight of the tracking aspect of it in terms of as an expense in the budget itself.
But this way, we still won't know, because it's only a single line item. It was simply moved from the bottom of page 28 up to the top of page 28, and it's just a line item for $150,000.
But what I'm saying is we're gonna try to go through this next year so we can reflect it and track it in the expenditures for the Board of Finance.
I see, so the monthly reporting, but couldn't we do that anyway?
Well, it's easier for the Finance Department to keep it analogous. In other words, have a separate line item in the budget, which is what you see, and then we have a separate line item.
Have that split.
So we track it this way, so it's split.
Right. But again, in most departments, we have, full-time personnel, part-time personnel, and then you go to the employment table, and it very clearly spells it out. These are the full-time personnel, and for whatever reason, these two individuals in our table of employment on page 42 are separated out, but yet the $150,000 is added into this bottom line figure, which is called total fire full-time. Now, one of them is only part-time, right?
But the bottom line number is the
I think,
bottom line number.
look, I think the employment table shows the bodies, right?
Right.
That's frankly been your contention all along, right? That it's not just the dollars, right? Because we've talked about dollars quite a bit, but I think in the past, you've commented that the employment table has to have the bodies, and the bodies are there, along with their associated salaries, right? And so it's clear from here that they are employees, they're listed as in the employee tables.
So the total budget in that department reflects those two positions, even though they're listed separately, so.
The titles match too, by the way.
Right.
It says part-time fire investigator inspector, and it says the same thing on, and full-time, sorry.
Well-
It says it on 28 and 42.
On 42, it says, in my book at least, it says consultant.
It says part-time fire investigator inspector / consultant, yes. So,
And then on
but
page 28, there's no consultant.
Page 28 says fire inspector, fire investigators.
Right. So
Right.
no consultant, so they don't actually match. But I guess my point is, again, in the interest of trying to present this as these are employees, I just think that you should have them listed as this is a full-time employee, this is a part-time employee, and that this number for total fire full-time of $4,196,969 should actually match that very first line item in the fire department budget of personnel full-time, and it
If I
doesn't.
may add, these two individuals don't get any benefits, so it is different from our full-time. And for us to be able to track it, it's better to keep it this way.
Look, here's my position, okay? We got a long budget here, okay? Sally asked Mike to consider and look into it, and it sounds like he has, okay? I think it's fine. We could differ on that, okay? I'm in favor of the resolution, but I think the presentation is just fine.
So one final point, Tim. I want to come back to what Ingrid said. So that line has benefits in it, that line that you're suggesting we put everything in. These two individuals don't have benefits. For us, as an organization, if you will, the town of North Haven, we do this every day. The Board of Finance comes here once a month. It's easier and better for us to list it this way.
Yeah, it's a hybrid employee.
Right.
And could even be considered an in-house consultant. So,
And for those listening at home, I apologize for the confusion. We're talking about 2 fiscal years here. One is the vote to change these 2 individuals, to approve these 2 individuals as employees in the current fiscal year, and then the separate issue is how they are actually reflected in our budget book for the next fiscal year, meaning 23-24. So.
And there's one final point that's important to me, and to the fire department, and to the finance department. This is why I said to Ms. Boemi that I would look into it. So there's fees generated, and we have a separate fire fee that you see in the revenue report. So it's better for us to look at the expenditures, knowing that it may not be 100% analogous to the fees, but when you have the fees that we separated for us as management and leaders every day, it's easier for us to track it this way.
All right, we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Wait, what is the motion?
Well, you said it.
I said it. I think somebody has to actually make a motion. Okay.
Restate the motion.
Sure, I'll restate that. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Finance accept the 2 fire inspectors as one full-time and 1 part-time employee in the current fiscal year, which is 2022-2023.
I'll second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, so next up is the appointment of the auditor, but before we get to that, I know it's been asked by several members, most of us actually, about how we're doing with the CAFR. I'll let Mike fill in the details, but I did talk with Richie. He has talked with Mr. Centofanti. He is continuing to ask for information. The audit is due to the state by June 30th. And my last conversation with Mr. Monaco, which occurred prior to this meeting, was that Mr. Centofanti said that he had to have it by then. So Ingrid or Mike, then if I miss anything, please fill in.
So that is a good executive summary of the situation. The more detailed within the summary is the fact that we've had a lot of changes this year in this government. And I'm not even going to mention the staffing issues, the loss of Ed Swinkowski. The biggest issue that we were faced with was the upgrade of Munis. Munis did not have enough training for us, so we fell behind in a lot of the situations that would normally be an even flow of tying accounts out together. So in my opinion, the biggest problem that's caused this final request for an extension is the upgrades for Munis. Ingrid and I and Rich have talked many times. Ingrid has been doing a great job for us, but it's overwhelming with this upgrade, with some of the accounts that we're trying to figure out. So the auditor is asking for more information so that he can do the audit properly. And I would prefer an audit done properly than to force the auditor, push the auditor to get something to us when it may not be totally pristine. And that's the situation, ladies and gentlemen. Ingrid?
Yes, I'd like to add that this audit too was previous to when most of the staff right now came aboard. Munis has now been upgraded so we can pull information from the server. All this audit, we have to go pull information from boxes, and it's not as accessible as it will be in the future. So we're trying to make that happen too.
One final point, Tim.
Go ahead.
For those of us who come from the outside world, I'll use myself as an example from the corporate world, whether it was my company when I was CEO or our clients, any upgrades in systems create a very slow and phlegmatic pace that can be very difficult to deal with.
Yes.
And this is what we have been up against here. And when you update a financial system with so many differences, it has slowed us down and slowed the auditor down to have him take his time to make sure that every account, every line item is perfectly tied out.
Okay. So we have the appointment of the auditor
Sir,
coming.
Wait,
Sorry.
Could I comment,
Yeah.
could I comment on the comments?
Yes, go ahead, sure.
Please.
Yeah. Aside from the formulation of the budget, the CAFR presentation to the Board of Finance its review and the questioning of the auditor, it's just one of the key functions or duties of this Board of Finance. And to have this delayed for this long, now we're talking, it should have technically been completed December 31st. Now, we've oftentimes asked for a 1-month extension, but this has been going on month after month after month. I'm surprised that the state allows this, but without this, we just have no clarity, there's no accountability for what happened last year, and there's no learning on the part of the Board of Finance for the current budgeting process that we just went through. So I would say this is less than optimal, management, or somehow it's not the way we want things to be. And I know you're not satisfied with it either, and no one is. It's not a reflection on the board, this board itself, because we have no control or oversight of the auditor beyond its selection, beyond its appointment. But we're so much in the dark that right now, big items that the town has to handle, like Gatsby. The only thing about Gatsby we know about is that it was a movie made in 1974, and that's not the way it should be. Well, that was my Chimlianus joke of the month, by the way. So,
Mike,
I mean-
I sorry for interrupting. We will have Mr. Centofanti here either at the August meeting, or if necessary, we would try and schedule one over the summer if schedules permit. But no one's saying that he won't be in to present it. Listen, I'm not happy about this either. I doubt any of the board members are, okay? But I'm not in control of this. We need him to do the work. It's a monumental document, as you know, and yes, it was due by state statute back in December, and it has gone over a month or two at times over the years, but this is, one of the longer times that I've experienced, and you probably have as well.
I know our main computer system, our main accounting system is being changed, but I still don't understand how it was done in the past, whether we actually went to pieces of paper or went to or whether the old munis can work and concur, at the same time that the new upgraded version is operating, or whether it can only be one or the other. But I just can't believe that we can't go into last year's records to go and evaluate last year, and how the current changes have affected the way we can look backwards.
So Mike, let me ask you a question, okay? Because I'm not happy with it either. But Joe has called me with information that Munis couldn't report, and I gave him the information. So the question is, what's the difference if we saw it tonight, we see it in June, or we see it in August? You're still going to see it, like to Tim's point. We're not suggesting that we're just going to forget about the CAFR. It's going to happen.
So
Well-
the question is, will you be able to submit something in June that this board sees first?
Well, we never see it before it's submitted. That doesn't happen. That's not the routine. What happens is, it gets submitted by the town, and if they meet the normal deadline of December 31st, and it usually goes out with the January package. So we don't get to bless the CAFR before it gets submitted.
That's not the way it works.
It gets submitted and then is reviewed by us, and as you all know, Mr. Centofanti gives us an overview.
And you gotta keep this in mind, okay? This goes back to me saying, you're here once a month. I'm on the hot seat more than anybody here on this board, because I have a refinancing package I have to do, and I can't do it without the CAFRA. So I'm the one, myself, that has to deal with the implications of not having a CAFRA on time.
Yes, well, we all are.
We
This
all,
board is.
for sure, this
It's
board.
not just you who don't get the benefit from a CAFRA report. And yes, of course, the effectiveness is much lessened if we didn't get it before or in the middle of our budget-making process, or whether we're getting it now or later. But tonight, you're going to be asking in just a minute about the possible reappointment of that order, okay? And my vote is no, because I didn't see how he did things like, to me, to my understanding, they might not have put enough of their own resources in to get the job done on time.
So there is a risk for us in not doing a one-year renewal. The risk is we have to then pick the pieces up with a new auditor. There's an advantage, this is why it's on the agenda, to not doing another 3-year appointment. There's an advantage for another 1 year, so that the next auditor that comes in has a clean slate to work with. That's why this is on the agenda. And this is what we understand doing this every day.
Just to remind everyone, last year, Mr. Santafanti actually came to present to us on the very same month in which the reappointment was on the agenda. And it was my request that we actually listen to what he had to say first, and then vote on the reappointment second. And so this year, we don't even have that information in advance of the reappointment. And so I think that, as you all recall, last year, there was a very complex mapping, if you will, that he had to walk us through, and Mr. Frieda gave us kind of a Reader's Digest version of that, his own version of that, and I think particularly with the handling of MRSA, it's a fairly complex process, and I think that as the watchdogs, the financial watchdogs of this town, it is the absolute responsibility of this board to ensure that before we recess for the summer, that we have a very firm understanding of how the previous year's financial books are being closed, let alone this year's.
If I
That's
may
my
add a comment.
Sure.
Another reason that I am not happy to as your comptroller, because I have to oversee all of this, but I did ask about our bidding process, and our bidding process takes out 1.5 months to 2 months to appoint a new auditor, because they have to come and present to us. And we have to submit this appointment by June 1st, so we will have less than 3 weeks.
I've talked to Ellen, too. I didn't recall your comment from last year, Nancy, but that's just my advancing years. I did talk to Ellen, who's been, was and is the person who puts a package together and for 25 years. And although I know we're talking about the CAFRA, we're also talking about the appointment of the auditor at the same time. What she has said to me is the appointment of the auditor has always been on the May calendar. That's just one of the items that's historically been on the calendar. I don't know if the law that Ingrid's referring to, but Richie actually alerted me to it as well, is new. But I'm understanding from Richie, but also just what Ingrid said, is that we need to do this by the 1st of June. And yes, I talked to Ellen about an RFP. We certainly will have to do one next year, but that's a process. It's a process that's going to take a couple weeks to get out, vet the applicants, bidders, and reappoint a new auditor. So that can't be accomplished in the next 2 weeks.
So again, just to clarify, we're talking about potentially 2 different fiscal years. We're talking about first trying to close out the books and get a CAFRA report on fiscal year 2021-2022. And now we are 2 months shy of completing fiscal year 2022-2023. So Mr. Santafanti and his group at O'Connor Davies would still be responsible for completing the audit report and CAFR for 21-22, even if we chose not to continue and have him do the report for the current fiscal year. Isn't that true?
I think you said 21, 22. What did you mean exactly?
Isn't that right? That's where we are.
Yes.
We're trying to close the books on
For
what
last
happened
fiscal
almost a year ago. August of 2022
Yes.
was
that's
when we
correct.
closed, when we ended the year. So we're trying to get a CAFR report on 21-22. And we're also considering a reappointment so that they can do the books for 22-23, which is the year that we're currently in, and we will be concluding at the end of June.
Well,
And then we start fiscal year 23-24.
Right, well, we're appointing, right now, we're voting, looking to appoint an auditor to audit the year we're in right now. Correct. That's right. Well,
Yes.
despite the issues with Munis, I would be very surprised if these computer issues and the upgrades and whatever, everything was not ironed out by August, and a new company could come in and work with a new system. So that is, it's hard for me to imagine that the changes that have occurred are going to continue well into the future.
So how do you manage the June 1st date that Ingrid brought up? It's going to take a month and a half to go through the RFP. We're obligated, as Ingrid said, to
Yes.
make the appointment by June 1st.
Well, we painted ourselves into that corner by not considering this as a viable option up to this point.
So look, this is going to come to a vote tonight, you know, and
Yes,
people are going to vote.
that's okay.
That's where we're
It's all
at
right.
right now.
Yeah, I know. It's,
I will let the board know that I do have the sample contract in from O'Connor Davies. It reflects a 7% increase over the prior year.
So as Mr. Hallahan pointed out, and I had asked him this question earlier, what is the basis based on this last year's work from O'Connor Davies that we can turn to and say, yes, based on the quality of this work in this last year, I am confident in both the quality and accuracy of their work, and that compels me to reappoint them for the next year. This is the hitching point.
I would say it's a longer-term view. Not to say that you wouldn't, let me try and phrase this properly. The longer-term view is that we vetted his firm a couple years. We were with McGladrey, okay, who was a highly respected firm. And then we went with O'Connor Davies. At the time, by the way, and still, Mr. Centofanti came to us as one of the most respected municipal auditors in the state of Connecticut. Heretofore, meaning prior to the delays in the current CAFR, I'm not aware that we had any complaints about his work. Members of the board have seen him once a year. Obviously, our accounting and finance office works with him regularly. I'm not aware of any complaints that we've had. In fact, he originally came to us because he did a special report for us. So I understand what you're saying, Nancy, and listen, we could make a decision based on what's happened recently, but that would, I guess, be blaming him for the delay. And from what I'm hearing, that's not the situation.
My main contention with this is not about the word quality. He has a certain quality that, and I think that we may have wanted his presentation to be a slightly different in some ways in terms of the speed of the information given and the ability to interact with him. But it just has to do with perspective, and I think he already did receive a one-year extension
Yes, he did.
last year.
Yes, he did.
And, you know, the value in this is to get a different, fresh perspective from a new firm, from a new group of people, from a new group of auditors. And that is incredibly valuable, and it's something we should be looking to do right now.
I think that's something to take into account, Mike, when the RFP is issued and we have bidders and we make a decision on the new order.
All right, well, I'm finished with, I've made my point, and so I'm okay.
I have a question for you, Ingram. So was it just an update of the software, or was it an update and it changed? Were there new accounts? Like, what's the structure of the upgrade? Was it purely software upgrade, or?
It was purely versions updates, just software. It wasn't a change of an account. But we did went more digital. We were not feeding Munis the information fully. It was mostly like we had Excel, so now we're relying on
So now you're relying on a
Munis.
system, so.
Right, if we need to go pull a journal entry, we don't have to go and look for boxes and everything over there. We can just go and rely on the system. This fiscal year is going to be a lot smoother. But we were also, we were not here, so trying to recreate, we can't go back and ask questions we have to go and figure it out ourselves.
And that's kind of my point for asking the question. So it would make sense for him to still do it. And nobody likes that, but based on what you said, which is why I asked the question, I don't see that we have any other option, and we're not going to be able to make the deadline for June 1st, get an RFP and get it, and nobody likes it, but it is what it is. But that's why I asked the question. It's not just a software update. There was manual, there was a lot of probably reporting changes and all this stuff that people had to learn. So if they have to learn it, now you got the auditor who's familiar with the old, who's got to reconcile old to new, so that makes sense. I mean, nobody likes it, but that's the logical situation.
So let's stay on that point for a second, because that's an excellent point. So consider this. The auditor's asking Ingrid, me, and Rich, and finance for information. He needs the information to complete the audit. They're struggling with understanding the system and all the retrievals that Ingrid is talking about. So this is part of the delay. But as Ingrid said, for the next fiscal year, this is really going to be smoothed out, because we're looking in a rearview mirror on what the problems were that have affected that audit. But now moving forward, they have a great understanding of how it works now. So next year, whoever that auditor ends up to be in the future, when he asks for information to complete the audit, they're going to be able to have a great speed of execution on giving him the information.
Right.
And that's what this is all about. That's what we're trying to say here.
So Ingrid, just a quick question. When would you say the upgrade was completed and all in-house staff were trained? By what point in this year would you say that was accomplished?
Will be accomplished.
Well, the upgrade was in August, right? And we have been training as
So it was
we
all
go.
at once.
So
It
he
was
has
all at once.
also asked for more information than what he asked previous years. So even to the Board of Ed, constantly asking for more and more and more information, and we have supplied everything that he needs. But
So
he's
you-
still asking for more information. But the training, it's an ongoing training.
Right.
Yes.
But you've been able to respond to all of
respond
his
to him,
responses
yes,
or
everything.
questions?
He just keeps asking for
and
more and more.
provide
we
him
just
with
keep
everything that he
supplying.
asked for?
Yes.
Okay.
He can ask any of our team members, and we all give him the information that he needs. In meaning our finance department.
Right. So
Yes.
I guess that's what I'm really wrestling with, is even with this upgrade that took place almost 10 months ago, if that took place, and obviously training is ongoing, if you have been able to provide him with all of the information that he has requested, I guess I don't understand why.
Because he keeps coming with more and more questions. So sometimes we have to dig into more other reports. Sometimes we have to go and sit down as a team and figure out what happened and give him an answer.
So one of the questions they couldn't answer that I got involved with was the outside investments that we have. That took a while to get him an answer on that. because we had to go to the provider whom we had the investments with. And as you see, there's a great increase in interest income that we did. So that took some time. That's an example. That is something that Ingrid was saying that we didn't need to ask before. But because what we've done is we have reinvested a lot of cash into high-interest accounts that are reflective in the revenue line, that's one example of something he didn't have to ask for in the past.
Yes.
And that took a while to get that information to him, because I was directly involved with that.
So you hadn't done that before, or we hadn't done it with such success before?
We hadn't done it with such success before because the interest rates were rising. So we got a greater return on some of those investments. We changed companies, and he was looking for the statements, and we had to get him the information. That took some time.
All right, I'd like to offer a motion, please. I'd like to move that we appoint PKF O'Connor Davies as the accountant for the town of North Haven to audit the books and records for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, for a price of $83,925, which, as I mentioned earlier, was a 7% increase. I'll take a second.
I'll second it.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Just to clarify, that price is for the Board of Ed and the town. It gets allocated out, so your budget books show a lower number. Sorry. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Thank you. Tammy, if you wouldn't mind, for the record, just reflect that within the discussion, it was agreed that we will put this out to RFP in the fall. Okay, thank you. All right, our final item tonight is the mill rate. The budget did pass yesterday by a vote of 437 to 236. Stacy's still here. She called me today. We actually need 2 motions tonight. Mike pointed out in the town meeting that there's a cap on the mill rate statewide for all towns and cities, which is pretty close to ours, by the way, our proposed, I should say, at 32.46 mils. As you can see from the budget books on page 6 and from our prior discussions, the mill rate is 32.65. There is a ever so slight difference between those. Stacy gave me an estimate of about $68,000. The difference, by the way, gets reimbursed by the state of Connecticut, so there's no impact on the budget. But Stacy does need a resolution for the motor vehicles, and then we'll not a resolution, but a vote. And of course, we'll have a vote on the regular mill rate. So before we go any further, any questions on the motor vehicle piece?
Yeah, I don't know that I entirely understand that, because don't we charge the 32.65, and then ultimately we get reimbursed for the difference later?
We charge at $32.46 and get reimbursed for the difference later.
32.65, right?
No, $32.46 is the cap on motor vehicles, right? So we charge that.
We
and then-
charge the state cap.
Right.
Oh, we charge the state cap.
We charge the state cap, and the difference between that and the .65, the state pays us.
And
Will
that
pay
was
us.
the
Will pay us.
$69,000 or so that I mentioned at
Yeah.
the town hearing.
Right.
I see.
Any further questions on that? Okay. So, I'd like to make a motion that for fiscal 2024, the mill rate for motor vehicles, that includes both commercial and personal vehicles, be set at 32.46 mils.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I'd like to make a motion that for all other property in the town of North Haven for the fiscal year ending 2024, the mill rate be set at 32.65.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to public comment.
I just wanted to thank,
Oh, sorry, Mike,
I just
go ahead.
wanted to thank this fine Board of Finance, except Bob's on the end, for a great job done, an amazing job done. And the everything that was taken into consideration, I think was respected by the public, and thanks to the many phone calls made by our first selectman, he got 400 and some other people to vote for it, and that is terrific. And you know, it's painful. It's not something that we love with an increase like this, but I think the public understands that if you average it out over a few years, we're managing the town and providing the financial resources that we need to maintain the quality of life that we have. So thank you very much to everyone on this board for going through this process in a very amicable and thoughtful way.
Thank you, Mike. Public comment? Ms. Buemi.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive.
At some point, we have to exempt you from providing your address.
That's the rules. I like to follow the rules. I have 6 things. First, Mr. Zambrano. I was very happy to join my fellow members of the Board of Selectmen at a special Board of Selectmen meeting on May 12th. We unanimously appointed you to this Board of Finance, and I want to welcome you. And I was privileged to vote to appoint you with my fellow members. And as the chair said, you have a very impressive banking resume, and I'm sure that you will contribute positively, so welcome.
Thank you.
Secondly, I would like to thank the first selectman for keeping his word in voting tonight on the change in the employment table of organization, whichever one you want to call it, which I supported because of the liability issue, but I still believe in proper process. And yes, things are open for interpretation, but I believe that Section 707E of our charter is very clear that whenever you hire people or change the employment table in any way during the fiscal year, the Board of Finance must vote to approve it. Thirdly, I'd like to thank the 673 people who voted yesterday out of the 18,000 plus registered voters. I want to thank them for coming out. I had the pleasure of saying hello to quite a few as I stood at the polls for a while. And I'm sure, along with Mr. Frieda, he's probably a little disappointed in the turnout again. It is a little bit higher. Bless you. A little bit higher than last year, but still, I wish more people would come out and vote. I'm sure you feel the same. And I just think we need more press coverage next year. Maybe that'll help. But again, I wanted to thank the 673 people who made the trip to the rec center. Fourth, I wanted to talk about an issue that I raised for the 23-24 budget. I raised it at the February Board of Finance meeting, and it has to do with the raises that are in the fire department on page 42 of the employment table of the 23-24 fiscal year. We have 42 union firefighters, and there's a combined total of $250,000 in raises. And I asked you about that in the February meeting, Mr. Frieda. And you said at that time that that was in anticipation of a new CBA, a new fire department union agreement being signed soon, and you said in a couple of weeks. And we did have a special Board of Selectmen meeting a couple of weeks after that February meeting, and we did act on a union agreement, but it was not the fire department. And as you know, the fire department agreement expired on June 30th of 2022, and usually we don't see increases in the budget until it's renewed, and then those retroactive payments are made using the contractual obligation line under personnel policy. So my question is, based on what you said in February, will we be having a special Board of Selectmen meeting before the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, 6 weeks away, to renew that contract?
Let me check on that, Sally. okay?
Otherwise, what would
Yeah.
be,
I
I
think
understand
we
the
have-
budgetary authority because the budget passed, but what would the contractual authority be to give them the raises, which I support the raises. Again, folks, everybody, you could question a process without questioning the substance. So what is the contractual support for the raises if we don't
No,
do it by the end of June?
I was trying to
Thank
get
you.
I was trying to get to this.
Yeah, I
okay,
just
so-
wanted to clarify
so
my question.
When I said, let me check into it, we have to find out when it's gonna be signed, okay? So once it's signed, we'll set up the meeting.
Okay, they sign it before we approve it?
Well,
We, the Board of Selectmen?
We'd have to, you know the process, we have to
Yes.
bring Bill Ryan, and he has to
Right.
present it to us, okay? So
Right.
once that's all set, then we'll have the Board of Selectmen meeting, the special meeting.
Oh, okay, so, okay, I always thought that it was finalized by the Board of Selectmen when we vote on it in executive
Probably
session.
ratification, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there has to be a ratification,
Okay,
so.
all right. Look, you said 2 weeks, I waited 3 months, and this is the last
I know, I
monthly
understand.
meeting before August, so, this is my last chance to ask you about that, because I think we need to do that.
Yes.
Because as you said, the raises were put in anticipation of the new CBA. Fifth, while you were away with the high school event, the chairman mentioned something about no more waivers for MRSA.
Right.
And I just wanted clarification on that, or for you to expand on that, because what do we do with the $3 million that's imprisoned in the MRSA fund if we can't use waivers, which is what we've been doing over the years?
Yeah, so the waiver process, apparently, in my conversations with OPM, there might have been some abuse somewhere, not here in North Haven. So all waivers that include vehicles, at least for this coming fiscal year, or currently this fiscal year we're in and next fiscal year, they are not going to be authorizing any waivers. So what is the money for? Streets, roads, there'd be drainage issues, patching issues, pothole issues, all the expenses that are generated if we have to put a new curb in somewhere, if there's a sidewalk that, which is normally the resident's responsibility, but a tree root breaks the sidewalk up, and it's a town tree in the right-of-way, those are the things that this is used for, streets and roads activity. Now, in the end, we should be very grateful that we're getting more money than we're spending. But you gotta understand, let me explain this. OPM, okay? I'm very close with OPM. OPM appointed me on a board to hire people within the OPM office. Me, out of all the chief elected officials. So when OPM says to me, hey, Mike, we're no longer gonna do this, don't put any more waivers in, we're telling everybody, that speaks volumes to me because of what happened in other cities and towns. So the good news here is we've got a lot of latitude on streets and roads and sidewalks that are broken because of tree roots to spend this money on. So we have the money available. And the other good news is we're gonna have money that's gonna roll over. Keep in mind now, you saw this after Ingrid took the $800,000 out. We're down to, let's say, a number of 2.2 million from the 3 million that's listed on the outside fund report. We're gonna get 2.2 million in June.
Right, and right now, we started the fiscal year at 3,012,000, and we have the exact same to the penny amount in there, 3,012,000.
Yeah, but
That-
Ingrid's got 800,000, that she's
So
mentioned.
when we reconcile it at the end
No,
of the
that's
fiscal year.
what we started. We
Right.
started on July 1st, 2022, we started with
Yes.
3,012,000. That 800,000 is not
But
in
that's
there.
gonna come out when we
Yes.
reconcile at the end of this fiscal year.
But will go in, will be the 2.2.
2.2.
Yeah.
So, I got that.
Okay, net
I-
2.2
Yeah.
plus 2.2 more.
Gotcha, okay. I just asked it because historically, we've spent a lot of MRSA money
I know.
in recent years on major public works equipment, trucks, plows, all sorts of stuff, recycling, hundreds of thousands of dollars we have used the waiver for.
Yes.
So I was just, and that money could also be used to help with paving too, right?
That's right.
So maybe we could help keep our bonding down a little bit by using some of this. Okay, and the sixth and final item that I had was I would once again like to request that a town attorney be present at the budget town meeting. I requested that last year and the year before. And I just think it would be a good idea. For example, the question that I had about the inspectors not being listed as personnel on page 28 of the budget book, the fire department section. You guys talked about it, and I understand, you know, so that you could track it. You talked about it as a budgetary issue. I was asking from a legal liability issue. These guys are hired, which you proved tonight, for purposes of liability coverage. So I just wanted to make sure that listing them in the budget book as non-employees would not affect that status and not jeopardize that liability coverage. So that's more of a legal issue, which is, but as long as you got an opinion that it's okay to do that, that's fine. But that, my question really was a dual legal budgetary question. And once again, I'd like to request, we only have 2 meetings required by our charter, and the budget town meeting is one of them, that a town attorney be present at that meeting. So
You know,
that's all.
that one falls on me because to Bill Ryan's credit, he asked me, he said, Mike, do you want me to attend? I said, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I personally put a lot of time in those 2 presentations with the details and the facts in the presentation. So I had not, of course, anticipated your question, and maybe if, you know, maybe he could have been there for that. But to his credit, he said, hey, look, you want me to come? I said no. And of course, we're looking to save money too on these line-by-line items.
I understand. Okay.
And, you know, legal fees as an example. And the attorneys are supportive of that. They're not trying to come to every meeting to pile up legal fees. They're respectful to us trying to manage the line-by-lines here. So I take the.
Okay, well, another way, I understand your point about trying to save money, so maybe another way around this is, in the future, if I or anyone else would have a potential legal question, they could present it through your office ahead of time to the town attorney, you know, at least a week ahead of time of the budget town meeting, and you can get an answer that way. So a concerned citizen, which is what I was at the budget town meeting, could get an answer to a quasi-legal question in that format, and then maybe save a little on him sitting there for the hours and hours of the meeting and just spending 10 minutes looking at a question and answering it.
I would be absolutely open to do that.
Okay, so that,
And I'll tell you
there.
this, I'll even take it a step further.
Okay.
If there's multiple questions that we know in advance, I'd be more than happy to have Bill Ryan there, or
Okay.
Jeff D'Onofrio. So.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
your
Sally.
time and attention. Have a nice summer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Michael?
Just a quick follow-up to Mr. Frieda.
Yes.
On the waiver discontinuation for grants and municipal projects, is that waiver temporary? Is that the discontinuation, is that permanent or is that temporary?
At this point, it's permanent, yes.
Well, don't forget, we were in a temporary situation in the first place.
Yeah, right.
We originally were getting capital, and then they said no, and then they were allowing a waiver process, which we were using, right? So
Yeah.
that was a temporary or workaround, I'm not
It was
sure.
a very important and accessible way for us to
Yeah.
finance capital.
Right, yeah.
I agree with you, you know, and we can make an argument that because of the relationship we have with them, they did some waivers for us that maybe they wouldn't have ordinarily done. So, what I was saying, ladies and gentlemen, the mic was off. I think we're off camera. We are on camera,
All right.
okay. So the question was, Michael Hallian asked about the waivers. So I can make an argument that we got the waivers based on the relationship we have with OPM. But what Michael's saying, and it's true, I agree. We were able to buy these trucks, 200,000, 300,000, one was 454, I think. So we were able to take those expenditures out of our capital.
But most of that equipment is connected with the responsibility of maintaining our streets and roads. And to have that no longer an option for us is going to leave us a little shorthanded in some ways, because we eliminated a whole bunch of capital this year for next year's budget, believing that the waiver process was the way we would achieve obtain those pieces of equipment. And now that we don't, we're going to have to come up with some alternative plan for items that were deemed essential by Public Works.
Yeah, there's no question about it. You're absolutely right,
Yep.
so.
Yeah. Now, good luck with that.
Mr. Chairman, I also have one quick question.
Go right ahead.
Could you, by the way, could you appoint someone to OPM who will overturn
There you
that
go.
ruling?
That would be a great idea, yeah. I just had one question for Mr. Frieda. Since the issue of the paving project has been raised, will that paving project, since it exceeds the $25,000 threshold, will it be put out to bid as part of the sealed competitive bidding process?
Which paving project are you referring to?
Sorry, the 10 miles of paving
Yeah.
that's done each year, you had mentioned.
Yeah.
It had gone from $2 million for 10 miles to $2.6 million for 12 miles, and now you're talking about potentially a bonding project of $3 million, again, back to 10 miles. So that's $300,000 per mile. And so I'm just wondering if you had mentioned that there was kind of a monopoly on this particular project, and I went to the Connecticut DOT website, and I saw that there are actually several different vendors that are actively involved in doing this type of project throughout the state of Connecticut. So I'm just wondering to what extent we are putting
Yeah,
this out to bid.
So the current contractor, Tilcon's on the state bid process. They're generally, they generally have a monopoly because most municipalities do it. Some of the other vendors don't have the capabilities of 10 miles worth of roadways. So we always will look for alternate sources. If there's RFQ or bid possibilities, yes, we're going to respect the integrity of the 25,000, but in the end, some of them may be disqualified because they can't handle the scope of the work that Tilcon can.
Right.
So this is why other municipalities don't hire some of the smaller companies, because Tilcon has, and you have to understand this, please, that up until a few years ago, when Costello, the milling company, was purchased by Tilcon, there's some of these vendors that don't have the milling capabilities. So you've got to hire a miller before, and then what happens with that is, I know I'm getting a long-winded here, but this is very important for people to know, that we never want a 2-month delay between milling a road, because one company does the milling and then another company does the paving, because there are too many problems with that.
Right.
And that is why Tilcon, as I said in the past, has the monopoly. Lastly, if you lived on a road, anybody here lived on a main road, and all of a sudden we went that route, we had to hire a separate miller and a separate paver. Milling's done. 4 weeks go by, 5 weeks go by. There's raised structures, blowouts, front-end problems. That is why we do it this way.
But the question was, you're going through the traditional sealed competitive bidding process. That's what you're doing?
Unless there's somebody, yes, if there's somebody that does everything, we will go through the traditional process.
That would be great.
But the state recommends Tilcon because they're a one-source operation for both paving and milling.
Right. I mean, we certainly don't want organizations that typically do driveways trying to do 10 miles in our town.
Exactly.
That's certainly the case. But certainly in going to the Connecticut DOT website, and you can search by town, and you can look at the specific projects, I saw at least a half a dozen different vendors. And again, I am by no means an expert in this. I have family members that do work in this field in other states, but I just feel as though this is something, particularly if we're looking at a 50% increase in a per mile cost, going from 200,000 per mile to 300,000 per mile, that perhaps this is the time to actually be looking at other competition, because to give Tilcon the perception that we will pay them whatever they ask for is not necessarily in the town's best interest.
So the answer would be yes, and I want to make one final point, just so people have an understanding, okay? So, as you well know, Nancy, maybe about 3 years ago, I spoke with a lot of your residents on your street, and I ended up paving your street. And there were some driveway aprons that were destroyed because of the paving. And Tilcon does the repair on those aprons. That's critically important for a resident.
No question.
And that's the other thing that sometimes separates them, why they get most of the work. Because if you live on a street and your road's paved and your driveway apron is destroyed during the process, and there's a company that doesn't replace that, that's a problem. So there's a lot to this, so.
For sure. And the quality of the work also, there's quality assurance and there's quality control. And I know that there was a point raised at the Board of Selectmen meeting about checking on quality control in some of those streets that have been recently paved that already have potholes. So it would be great if we could also get our vendors to be involved in that as well.
All right.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy summer.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.